So what we're looking at there in the picture is the outgoing data out of from our internal network. So things like proprietary company secrets, union organizer names, private affidavits of unfair labor practice complainants.
And it's not a coincidence that there are several current cases against Elon Musk and his companies at the NLRB, one of which is against SpaceX.
Hey, it's Jordan. I am in Flint, Michigan, East Palestine, Ohio,
Tumwa, Iowa.
Please support the only independent outlet on the ground covering what the corporate media covers up.
Hey, it's Ashley with Status Coup. Chief Union Buster Elon Musk and his Department of Government Efficiency, better known as DOGE, has found a way to gain access to very sensitive data on workers. According to an email seen by Status Coup, DOGE is installing 2 part-time representatives at the NLRB, the independent agency charged with protecting workers, for the next several months. While they will be in the office sometimes, according to the email, they will mostly be working remotely. I thought that remote work was something that the Trump administration was trying to do away with, but I guess Musk and DOGE get special privileges that the rest of us simply can't be trusted with because we will obviously be off golfing or doing something else that's not working. So again, DOGE is now semi-permanently installing itself at the NLRB to gain access to your data. And this data can include information on things like if a worker has filed an unfair labor practice complaint about their employer, if someone has been or is currently in the process of organizing and unionizing at their workplace, if someone has signed a union card, confidential affidavits, interagency correspondence, evidence submitted to the NLRB for trials, people's personal history, whether someone has testified against their employer, or information on whistleblowers. All of that information can be found within NLRB systems. And now, Elon Musk also has access to all of this data for at least the next several months. So definitely long enough to get any information DOGE and Musk might actually want. So now this once private information can be made public. So potentially, someone's employer can now see what worker has said about them or whether they've engaged in some kind of union organizing. This is insane, and it is just as corrupt as it sounds. I spoke with well-known labor lawyer Seth Goldstein, who had represented the Amazon labor union this morning, and he had this to say about DOGE's access to this sensitive labor data. This creates a chilling effect on people's willingness to come forward and engage in protected activity. Of course, if workers know that their employer could potentially access information that could be used to retaliate against them, they are going to be far less likely to engage in any kind of activity that could get them in trouble with their boss. So if you think that you could be fired or have your benefits, pay, hours in some way altered, you are not going to engage in the kind of activity that could make that happen. People need their jobs. They don't want to be fired. If people think that organizing in some way is going to potentially make them lose their jobs, they're not going to do it anymore. And all of this comes a day after a whistleblower from the NLRB, Daniel Baroulis, came forward to allege that DOGE, led by union buster Elon Musk, had taken sensitive labor data, again, like this protected union activity, from the NLRB computer systems. And as crazy as this story was, as was reported by NPR just like a whole 2 days ago, the administration has now essentially codified their taking this sensitive data. So I'm going to try to really quickly sum up Baroulis' allegation against DOGE. Baroulis says that after DOGE agents arrived at the NLRB in early March, he and others observed large amounts of data moving out of their system. DOGE staff had demanded top-level access to the agency's secure systems, and then they immediately worked to conceal their activity and cover their tracks as if they were hackers hacking into the system and stealing data, which is essentially what they did. Baroulis has alleged that a DOGE engineer was creating a sort of backdoor into the NLRB's case system, and that's when they saw this major spike in data extraction to somewhere unknown. And Goldstein noted that their data bank, so the NLRB's data bank, has been around since the early 2000s. So just imagine how many cases have been logged into that system through that time. There's been cases against Amazon, WeWork, plenty of other companies that now DOGE has access to those cases against them. And Goldstein says, we don't know what they've touched, and we can assume that they took what they want. I'm sure that they did. Previously, you would have needed a FOIA request to access this information. Now it is public. How information on workers and union activity could be used to make the government more efficient, I have no idea. But if that's their goal, if what they're really trying to do is make the government more efficient, I don't know why they would be taking such great pains to conceal everything that they've been doing in this system and cover their tracks. They've left no potential for any kind of accountability here. So even if they're being genuine in what they're doing, which I don't think that they are, even if they were, we can't actually go back and see what they've done. So now they've kind of closed us off from that kind of accountability. So Baroulis, alongside his lawyer, went on Rachel Maddow to talk about the whistleblower case that he has brought forward. So let's watch a little bit of that interview.
In terms of what you witnessed, you presented this screenshot showing what appears to be a large surge in data leaving the agency. For people who aren't familiar with what the NLRB does and what kind of data that might be, what is the sensitivity of the kinds of data that's housed in NLRB systems? What worries you about that potentially being exfiltrated to parts unknown?
Sure, absolutely. So what we're looking at there in the picture is the outgoing data out of from our internal network. There's also a correlating spike in the outgoing data from the database that houses our internal case data. So things like proprietary company secrets, union organizer names, private affidavits of unfair labor practice complainants. These are things that traditionally would be kept in a judicial system behind lock and key, and not anything to do with efficiency for sure.
Yeah. So this has nothing to do with government efficiency, and it's not a coincidence that there are several current cases against Elon Musk and his companies at the NLRB, one of which is against SpaceX. And Seth Goldstein noted that with the SpaceX case, there were 8 or 9 women who came forward, and he says they had the courage to bring a suit against Musk, and they were terminated. And now Doge has access to all of that information against them. So I don't know. Again, this doesn't seem like it has anything to do with government efficiency. Rather, it would seem that this is a crusade to find information that would be personally valuable to Elon Musk, which is, again, absolutely insane. The gall to use the government in this way, I could not even imagine what would go on inside someone's head to think that that's appropriate. But I'm going to play more of this.
Why would the security systems that protect the secrecy and the sort of sanctity of that data ever be disabled? Is there a sort of good faith reason that somebody would allow insecure mobile devices to access that data, or remove multi-factor authentication for people who are trying to access those data? Those security systems being disabled within NLRB systems, to me, just seem completely inexplicable. At least they don't seem like the sort of thing that could be done in a good faith sort of way. But am I missing something? Is that something that IT professionals do for other reasons?
No, you're absolutely correct. They're considered indicators of compromise. And the people that I work with are very meticulous. They're borderline OCD, and these aren't mistakes that I've ever seen them make before. So for all these controls to be off, in this small amount of time, it doesn't speak to being accidental.
Yeah, it doesn't speak to them being accidental. Baroulis said, and also there's no reason for this. Like, there's no reason for any of these secure systems to have their controls off so that they can't see what Doge is doing in there. The only thing that could possibly explain this is that they don't want anyone to know or to see what they've been doing. And I'm going to skip ahead in this interview a little bit to talk about, or to listen to Baroulis talking about the threats that he's received after putting this case forward.
Let me ask you about the threat that you received, Dan. You and your colleagues at NLRB had decided to pursue a formal investigation into what you regarded as a breach of the data and systems at your agency. Right. You prepared a request to CISA at the Department of Homeland Security to help you with that investigation. And then you received a threat at your home where you live?
Where I hadn't lived for too long either. I've only been there 2 months. The only place that I've actually updated that address is in the OPM database for my payroll with the government. That's really, I haven't even updated my bank card yet. So
can you tell us about the character of the character of the threat?
I think it was vague enough to not be. Can I just?
Yeah, I can jump in there for Dan, because this is actually quite difficult for him to talk about because it is quite personal. So this is a letter who somebody had drafted. And within the letter, there was specific information about Dan that can only be obtained through, for example, internal databases within the government. Because it's not anything, and we've had individuals conduct an investigation. We've had our own investigative team conduct an investigation to see whether or not any of this is really easily accessible online, and it's not. And so there is information that very few individuals would know. It could be something that was submitted to the government on an SF-86, a security clearance background investigation, et cetera. And the fact that he's only been at this residence for 2 months or less. We have that. We have the fact that somebody literally figured out where he lives, taped this note to his door, and flew a drone above him while he was walking his dog. I mean, I've only seen this once or twice in the years where I've represented whistleblowers or conducted investigations like this. When I saw this, this made me pause and get concerned about Dan and what's going on. And this is pure and simple witness and whistleblower intimidation, because this came forward before we even filed anything with the government, which means that somebody was monitoring his use of systems within the government, which for me is, is an indicator as to where this is coming from.
This is insane. This poor guy is being threatened, assumably by the government, to shut him up so that they can continue to dismantle the only paltry protection that workers actually have left. This is a warning to anyone else at any other agency that if you try to speak out, this could happen to you too. You could be walking along the street, walking your dog, and a drone could be following you with the express intent of intimidating you into shutting up. As you might imagine, it would seem that morale is very low at the NLRB right now. There have been rumors that the agency, many people in the agency are going to be placed on administrative leave. So things are not feeling good. I'm going to play a little bit more of this interview.
I've only seen this once or twice in the years where I've represented whistleblowers or conducted investigations like this. When I saw this, this made me pause and get concerned about Dan and what's going on. And this is pure and simple witness and whistleblower intimidation, because this came forward before we even filed anything with the government, which means that somebody was monitoring his use of systems within the government, which for me is, is an indicator as to where this is coming from. And the funny thing is that this was clearly done to intimidate him, to stop him from coming forward, but it didn't. And the reason why Dan came forward is not just to ensure that the truth comes out, but that other folks like him have the courage to come forward, because a lot of people believe or think that something is amiss, that this is happening within our agencies, within our government. But guess what? It is. And we have the evidence to establish that. And we need other people to come forward, because you know what? And one of my colleagues has said this once in the past, and it's so true. Courage is contagious. And this is in part why Dan is here and speaking with you today, not behind a silhouette or a screen, but directly to you today. And
they're right. Courage is contagious. And on this, Goldstein had to say, it is a warning to labor that if you're not out on the streets about this, how long until they start arresting labor leaders and sending them to El Salvador? How long before they just lock everybody out? They don't care. If the board isn't going to do its job, you better be prepared to go on strike. What I previously warned about since the ALU election, I warned repeatedly that there was a move by employers by Amazon, Trader Joe's, and other companies to push to reverse the New Deal, to push us back to the period before the 19th century, and that's where we're going. And the last 2.5 to 3 months has shown that this is what they're doing. It's going to take all of us. It's time for labor to recognize that this is intersected with their attack on immigrants, their attacks on universities. We're seeing that some of the people that they attacked were leaders of grad student unions. They figured out that they don't have to go through the laws. And because he's politicized the various agencies, he can just get away with this. To sum it all up, we need to be out on the street, we need to be engaged in strikes and nonviolent, fierce protest. So that is it for me. Please like, follow, and subscribe to Status Coup. And please, if you can, consider becoming a paid member so that we can keep bringing you reporting that isn't covered by corporate media. Bye.